Okay, well, welcome back to church. It is good to see all of you. Listen, I want you to know that one of the things that I think individually and that we as leaders here think the most about is what you are going to hear when you gather with us on Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, and Wednesday nights. And I'm really excited about what we've got going on this year on Sunday evenings. We've already gotten a start on this series, Surprised by Truth. There's a little bit more to come on that. We've got a surprise or two that is coming in the fall with a different series. I'll be talking more about that later. But one of the things that we're going to be doing throughout the year is this little series that we're calling Conversations. It's conversations that we're having with folks in ministry. We kicked off the series at the beginning of the year with Dr. Bart Barber, the president of the Southern Baptist Convention, and you're going to hear from a bunch of people by the end of the year. The focus is going to be on people who serve you, leaders in our congregation that you don't get to hear from very often, or at least you don't get to hear from them the way you're going to hear from them during these conversations. So I'm really excited for you to hear what a lot of the folks who love and serve you every day, every week, excited for you to hear from them. This week, you are going to hear from a crucial family at First Baptist Church. Listen, if it were not for this family, it is no exaggeration to say that the First Baptist Church that would exist without them is unimaginable. It would be unrecognizable to you because of their investment and their contribution. That is to say, there's no way to recognize First Baptist as it is without the investment of this couple. And so Edson and Donna Dickinson are going to come up and talk to us. Welcome them. They begged me to do this. And I was like, calm down, we'll get to it.
So we've gone from the president of the Southern Baptist Convention to us.
That's right.
I'd say these interviews are going downhill quick.
Well, we are really glad that you guys agreed to do this. And I'm excited because what I just said is true. First Baptist as we know it wouldn't exist without the investment of you and your family. And I am so thankful. And am eager for them to hear something about your life and your ministry. And so I'm going to give you guys, I gave you guys some warning questions so you wouldn't stress. So you kind of know what we'll talk about. We might go off book a few times, but I'll try to be careful about that. But I want you guys to feel the freedom to share what you think would be helpful. Maybe one thing that I know everybody's interested in before I get to the questions that I sent to you. Do you guys have any idea where Kate Middleton is? You know anything about that?
We could tell you, but they would have to kill us.
Okay, we'll talk later. All right. Well, why don't you guys tell us how you each got saved? How'd you come to know Jesus?
Well, first of all, I'll say that I grew up in a Christian home, and I was in church every single Sunday. My parents were very, very good about taking me to church. We're very involved, and the only thing about it is that it wasn't a Baptist church. Okay. I was raised as a Lutheran.
Really? Where?
Yes.
Where was this?
Here in Jacksonville.
Here in Jacksonville.
Trinity Lutheran Church, just over here on Park Street.
Okay.
And so I brought up at that Lutheran church. And, I don't know what they teach now, but in those days, what I remember about what I was taught there at a Lutheran church was belief, believe. So the service was creeds and liturgy, and, I sang in the choir there. And this idea of saving faith wasn't something that I was taught at the Lutheran church. The idea of being born again was something I had never heard. So when I got a little older, I went to junior college. That was FJC back in the day. Now, Florida State College of Jacksonville used to be called FJC, Florida Junior College, back in those days. And me and Donna both went to school there. That's where I met Donna. in the band program at the junior college. And she's the reason why I started to come down here.
First Baptist.
To First Baptist,
so you were
yes.
at First Baptist.
Yes, so she was already here. I started coming down here. I was going to my Lutheran church on Sunday mornings with my mom, and I was going here on Wednesday nights and sitting with Donna right up there in the balcony.
What year?
That would have been 1978, 79.
It's the year I was born.
How about that? Thank you very much for that.
You
Sharon.
really didn't have to say that part.
So, if we think about who was the preacher that was sent to me, it was Dr. Lindsay Jr.
Okay.
And I sat right up there and began to hear the answers to some questions that I had been contemplating my whole life. And about the same time, something else that God was doing in my life at the same time was I had a friend that I had from high school that was an atheist. Only atheist that I knew, but he was a really staunch atheist. And he'd ask me questions about what I believed in. He said, well, how does this work? Or how come this person can go to heaven, this person can't go? And I didn't have the answers. And I would ask myself, I say this is the most important thing in my life. How come I can't answer this man's questions? But I did not know the answers to those simplest questions. And I began to realize that I just didn't know what I believed.
Okay.
But Dr. Lindsay was giving me the answers
All right.
on Wednesday nights. And anyone here that sat under his preaching knows that Dr. Lindsay, it didn't matter what book he was preaching out of expositorily, but half of his sermon was always evangelistic.
Yeah.
He'd get to about 20 minutes in, and it would all turn evangelistic. And the other thing Dr. Lindsay had a real gift of doing is that when you listen to him preach, you felt like he was talking to you. I can't explain that, but it felt like on Wednesday nights that he was talking to me. But everybody says that. Yeah. So it was just a real gift he had.
Now, how anybody in here in 78, 79? Anybody? A good number of you. Okay, look at that. So Edson was sitting right up there.
On Wednesday nights.
Because that's where we could see the engagement ring sparkle the best.
Oh, is that why we did that? Okay. Now I know. So the Lord was answering all these questions in my heart, and my heart was beginning to change. And when I moved to Tallahassee to finish my degree in 1979, I knew I had to find a church, and I said it was time. I had to make this decision, and my very first Sunday when I had moved to go to Florida State, I went to First Baptist Church in Tallahassee and walked the aisle and asked the Lord to save me.
Okay.
And I got baptized there.
Who was the pastor there?
I cannot remember.
Okay.
I can't remember.
All right.
I remember the minister of music was a man named David Humphreys.
Okay.
I remember his name, but I can't remember the pastor's name.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Now, what about you, Donna?
It's really exciting to me how I came to know the Lord because it was this church.
Okay.
My sister was in high school, and a young lady named Mary Margaret Marshall Crosby invited her to a revival at this church with Adrian Rogers. That was in April of 1971.
Okay.
My sister got saved, and I saw a change in my sister. And I knew that I needed whatever it was. I didn't know what it was. So because she got saved here, we became prospects. I was invited to VBS. I was 13 years old.
Okay.
And I went to VBS, and it's a long story, but I got saved. It was just, I got saved, and it was wonderful. And it's funny, I keep going past it, but I need to just say, so Jack Cummings was the man that taught the youth, and he shared the gospel, and I knew I needed Jesus, but you had to go to the front, and there's no way I would do that. Then the next day, you just had to raise your hand, and there's no way I would do that either. But by Wednesday, he said, we all had cards that we had to fill out to show our attendance. So Wednesday, he said, if you just write on the back of your card that you want to get saved, and they'll all pass them in, and then we'll know, and then we'll come and get you. And so I got saved. And then in April of that same year, no, my sister got saved in April. I got saved at VBS. Later that year, my dad got saved because men from First Baptist came and visited him. Yep. And then in September, my mom walked the aisle to make her profession of faith and ended up being the 5,000th person that Dr. Lindsay Sr. baptized.
Okay. My goodness, that's great. So there's a lot I love about that, but one thing that's great is every year we always tell people, hey, get ready for VBS. Vacation Bible School is important. We're going to have a lot of people here. There are going to be people saved at the end of the week that aren't saved now. Make this investment. This is really important. And you never know when you're not just making an investment in the kingdom, but in your case, I mean, the church is making an investment in a future critical servant of our congregation. So that's very encouraging.
There used to be a photograph hanging in the baptismal suite area of the main auditorium, right off the elevator when you get off, and it was a picture of my mother-in-law getting baptized by Dr. Lindsay Sr., and it said, Dr. Lindsay baptizes his 5,000th person.
How about that?
And I saw it all the time.
That's great.
There's my mother-in-law.
Now, you said you guys met in band. So tell us the story.
Okay. Well, I don't remember. I have to admit. And I said, Donna, I don't remember. So when you're in a program like that and you're seeing each other every day, even from a distance, the actual meeting. But I think she's got a story, so I'll let her.
My perspective's a little different.
I don't remember this at all. So it's just not in the brain anymore. But she's got it.
So when I was in high school, I met this guy named Chris Dickinson with a group of young men from our church, and everybody told me what a great guy this was, and so I was a little interested, but didn't think about it again. Then started FJC. I'm actually a year ahead of him. Okay. So we were in the band room area, and some guys were talking about, and I didn't just hang out with guys. I want you to know that. But these friends of mine were talking about the students that were coming up, and somebody said, oh, Edson Dickinson is coming. And I had remembered meeting his brother and thinking what a great person he was, and said, oh, Edson Dickinson, is he related to Chris Dickinson? And so like I told Edson, I pondered these things in my heart. And then one day, go ahead and tell the part you remember.
Well, first of all, we were both on scholarship.
Okay.
I mean, FJC back in those days had a really fine band program. And so we were both on scholarship, which meant we did whatever they told us to do. They told you to sweep the floors, we'd sweep the floors. But we wound up both during our second year. Well, my second year, I guess this would have been the beginning of your third year. But we both wound up working in the library together, in the music library together. So we had a little bit more time to kind of react to each other and talk to each other. Okay. And one day, I remember this vividly. I'm about to leave to go home, get my car and go home, and I'm walking past Donna. She's sitting on the bench outside the music office, and she said, would you give me a ride home? Oh. And that's it. The rest is history.
That was my method.
Could you give me a ride home?
I didn't drive.
You didn't? Okay. Do you remember your first date?
Huh? Oh, yeah.
What was the first date?
Oh, yeah. We went to go see a movie.
Okay.
Yes, it was a Chevy Chase movie. He was a big Chevy Chase. Remember Chevy Chase?
Yeah. What Chevy Chase?
It was a big deal.
It
was called
Foul Play?
It was called Foul Play. It was Goldie Hawn, Chevy Chase, Barry Manilow singing our theme song.
Well, we actually have a clip of the movie right here.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yes, definitely remember.
Well, and then what year did you get married?
81.
81. All right. How many years is that?
Our anniversary is Thursday.
Thursday.
Yes.
Happy anniversary.
43 years.
43 years.
Yeah.
Look at that.
21st, March 21st.
Are you going to watch Foul Play? And
We don't watch that sort of thing anymore.
more sanctified.
No.
Well, so tell us about your family.
Well, the Lord has blessed us with 3 wonderful young men, our boys, and they are from, the oldest is Chris, and then the middle son is Scott, and our youngest is Daniel. And most people probably know more about our youngest and our oldest, Daniel and Chris, because they come home more often because they're the unmarried ones. So they're the ones praying for wives. But so they come home more, and we see them more here now. But my middle son, Scott, married his high school sweetheart, Laura.
Okay.
And she is our daughter-in-law, and a very sweet daughter-in-law. And they have our 3 grandchildren.
Okay.
That is Ansley, she's 11. Harvey is 8. And Henry is 4.
Okay.
And I'm actually, praise God, we're going to have to miss, we hardly ever miss a Sunday morning, but the Sunday after Easter, Ansley and Harvey are getting baptized.
Really?
In Orlando. So we'll be there to watch their baptism.
That's wonderful. Congrats. So 3 kids, 3 grandkids, and 2 of them are getting baptized coming
Yes.
up here.
Praise
That's
the
great.
Lord.
Congratulations.
And all of our boys, praise the Lord. This is just the blessing of having kids. They're all in church. They're all raising their families to be worshipers. Daniel's going to Capitol Hill, and he's buddies with Mark.
Yeah, okay.
The other day I was saying, Daniel was talking to us on a video chat, and he said, I'm having lunch with Mark tomorrow. I went, oh, really, Mark? Okay. And this is pastor of the church. And I said, did he ask you, or did you ask him? He said, no, he asked me.
Oh, look at that.
So
That's great.
They're all faithful young men.
That's wonderful.
And so we're blessed. Very blessed.
Now, so you get saved at First Baptist. Your salvation testimony got sort of launched from First Baptist.
Yes, definitely.
How did you wind up on staff here? How does that happen?
Okay. Yes. How did that happen? So the team here, the worship team, back in the late 70s was Denny Dawson and Camp Kirkland.
Yep.
And I knew Camp because I had sort of followed him throughout his career.
Okay.
So he began, when he came back from Florida State after getting his master's degree, he started teaching. And I believe he started at Arlington Middle. I think he was a band director there maybe for a year or 2.
Maybe, but he was also your brother's.
Yeah, right. So, so he started there. Then he went to Lee High School, where my brother was a student and in the band. So Camp was my brother's band director. And then Camp went to the junior college, FJC, to be the jazz band director. And my brother went to FJC. So my brother was following Camp Kirkland everywhere he went.
Okay.
And so I would have many chances to meet Camp at concerts, and I probably came down here for a couple of events over those years. And so I had a relationship already with Camp. And when I started dating Donna, of course, Donna had a very strong relationship. She was already playing in the orchestra. She started playing in the orchestra in 1971.
The flute.
Yes. So
You see Edson up here. He stands up and gives these directions, but you're sitting over there behind the grand piano playing that flute. Yeah. And you've been doing it for how long?
Well, I started here in 71.
71. Yeah. Okay. All right, but I interrupted you.
yeah, no, I'm not. So I had a relationship with Camp, and he knew of me, and he knew of my relationship with Donna Taylor. And so, and he knew that we were getting married, and he was all a part of help me with the wedding and everything, and so he knew that when I came back from getting my degree, I'd be coming here, and so he found a place for me to help in the ministry, and that was copying music. That was before the days of computers. We did everything by hand.
Oh, copying music, not
Copying
with
music,
a Xerox.
writing it out by hand. Yeah. So my first job, my first thing I was doing here when I was part time, back when we started in '82, was directing the middle school orchestra. So we had our orchestra program back then was divided by it was a graded program. So we had a high school orchestra and a middle school orchestra, and he did the high schoolers, and I did the middle schoolers.
Okay.
And I also did a lot of copying.
So copying
copying
and middle
music.
school directing.
Yes.
And then what'd you do after that?
Eventually Camp went into full-time writing career. And so when he left,
So you became the guy.
I became the instrumental director.
And you've been that since?
And I've been that since 1987.
87. So you were here from 83 to 87 doing middle school and copying, and 87 since you've been the big cheese.
The big cheese.
Yeah.
That's me.
That's what it says on your door.
Although I will say this. When Camp left to go into full-time writing and I took over the instrumental program, when Dr. Lindsay announced that to the choir and orchestra, he said, Ed Dickinson, he's going to be our interim orchestra director. Interim.
He never got out of there.
I kept waiting for Dr. Lindsay to tell me that I was no longer, but I was the guy.
Did anyone ever make that
No,
announcement?
I'm still the interim guy.
I'm so glad this is happening. The authority vested in me from the First Baptist Church, I declare you to be the instrumental director at First Baptist Church. That's so funny.
What you should have said is, let me think about it.
Listen, I know you're none to be trifled with, all right? I don't want to do that. So you come in 83, so who was did they call him the minister of music? Who was the minister of music then?
In 83, that was Denny Dawson.
Okay, what do we need to know about Denny Dawson?
Denny Dawson, unbelievably creative man.
Okay.
Very, very gifted. I mean, most of our worship pastors in the early days, I'd say, and we didn't call them worship pastors back then. Dr. Lindsay we didn't call anyone but him and Dr. Vines the pastors. So we were ministers of music.
Ministers of music.
And all these guys that we hired in those early days, they had to be very, very good with choirs. And that was one of the big things that Denny was very skilled at doing, is working with the choir.
So choir, highly creative.
Highly creative, yes.
How long was he here? He was here till when?
He was here, so Denny and Camp came on full-time, although Camp was here beginning the instrumental program back in the early 70s. He didn't go full-time till around 75. That's when Camp went full-time, and they brought Denny on somewhere in that area to be the minister of music, following Rick Stone's dad, R.O. Stone.
R.O. Stone.
R.O. Stone was the worship pastor until the mid-70s.
All right, so R.O. Stone.
R.O. Stone.
Then Denny Dawson.
Denny Dawson.
And then?
Rick Stone.
Rick Stone. So what do we need to know about Rick Stone? Tell us something about him.
Yeah. Rick, he just retired.
Yeah.
Did you know that? He just retired. I just noticed that. I saw that service on Facebook. But
just lately, right?
Just like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. From Whitesburg Baptist Church. But Rick, such an encouraging man. The thing I remember about Rick most of all is that anyone that had a chance to be in Rick's presence left feeling encouraged.
Oh.
I can't, that's just a gift.
Okay.
Just a fantastic encourager, wonderful musician, also a fantastic vocalist.
Really?
And he sang all the time, and it was just a blessing to hear him sing. He had his trio, and of course, he kind of grew up here at First Baptist with his dad being here. So.
Okay, so Rick Stone leaves, and then it's.
Well, Rick hired Rodney Brooks to be the youth choir director.
Okay.
And that was in 1988, I believe. And Rick left 1990, somewhere around in that area. And so Rodney moved up and became the minister of music.
All right, and Rodney Brooks was known as
another fantastic choir director. I mean, Rodney is just so gifted, knowing how to motivate, how to recruit, how to work with a choir. That's his huge gifting. And of course, again, another fantastic vocalist. So I worked with Rodney for 19 years before he moved on to First Atlanta.
Okay. And then it's.
Well, I did leave someone out. I'm sorry. Actually, Camp was the worship pastor here for a short time.
Oh, so he stopped being interim and became worship pastor for a little bit.
Well, Camp was the instrumental director here. When Denny left, and we went into a search for who would be the next worship pastor. He became the worship pastor for about 9 months.
Okay.
So he actually had that role and was
Okay.
leading worship here for a short time.
Okay.
Before we
In an
moved
interim way?
Rick into that position.
Okay. And so then, so after Rodney Brooks, then who comes after Rodney?
After Rodney is Dr. Jim Whitmire.
Okay.
And well, everyone knows that Dr. Whitmire's thing that he brought to us is the Passion Play.
Passion Play.
The Passion
And what
Play.
year was that? What year did Whitmire start?
2006.
Okay.
2000. He was here for about 6 years. I think that was from 2006 to 2012.
Okay.
And of course, when Dr. Whitmire came, he had no idea. He really thought this was going to be, he was going to be, yes, a short-term interim.
Okay.
He knew he was just going to be holding the seat until we found someone else. But it wound up being 6 years.
Okay.
And he always asked himself, why did this turn into a 6-year ministry? And what we look back on is realize that his son, Luke, found his wife here.
Oh, I see.
And so...
And Luke played Jesus for so many
Yes,
years
yes,
in the
he
Passion
did.
Play. Yes.
So we had done Passion Plays before the Passion Play, but they didn't get the citywide, area-wide appeal until Dr. Whitmire came and brought his expertise to that whole process.
Okay.
So that was his big contribution to what we did here.
And then we transitioned from Whitmire to
Dr. Bowersox.
to Dr. Bowersox.
Steve
He was the
Bowersox.
immediate past
Yes.
worship pastor. And what do we need to know about Bowersox?
Well, Steve, fantastic friend, wonderful encourager to me. He still sends me texts
Okay.
all the time and encouraging me. But I'd say that the big thing that Steve brought is that he brought us into the 21st century.
Okay.
So many things that we're doing with technology now, I'd say that's the big hallmark of his time with us. So many things with like Planning Center that really got started with him. Using iPads instead of copied music, Yeah, he made me learn Finale, a new music writing program.
What is it?
Finale is it's the
Finale.
program that
Okay.
I use to write music now.
Okay.
Digital audio workstations, which is software which we use to create tracks and clicks and all that stuff. That was all. In-ear monitors,
Yep.
all that stuff was from Steve.
Okay, now, so he's coming into work here every day, but you're both doing this together. What's it, so you've described a lot of people who have huge reputations in church music and the Southern Baptist Convention. You have been in the same position, although now you're finally official. What is it?
As of tonight.
March 17th, 2024, you're official. I'm glad that's over. But even though you're in the same job with all those people, it has to change a little bit. How has First Baptist changed for you in your role over the years, even though you've still had the same title, more or less?
Well, and this is something I'd say about more about when I talk about Scott, if I have a chance to talk about Scott Cannell. And that
Who's
is
Scott Cannell?
Scott Cannell. He's our worship pastor now.
Oh, good. Okay. Interim. Is he interim?
He's- what's changed over the years for all of us that began back in the 80s is that back in those days, what the job was more music than ministry. I think that, and every pastor is going to want it to always sound good.
Yeah.
So no one's going to want to ever say, well, we don't care how it sounds. We want it to sound good, and therefore we need to have good musicians and excellent musicians that know what they're doing. But over the years, what's changed is that more and more and more, our job is including pastoral care. And that's just a huge part. And a lot of that comes really, Pastor Heath, because of what you brought with your coming. And I think the culture of this church now is a culture of discipleship.
Okay.
And that is something that not only I and our pastors feel, but I'm sure everyone in this audience feels as well. Yeah.
Well, tell us, thank you for that. Tell us, dish some dirt on Scott Cannell. What's something we need to know about that we don't know?
Oh my. Well, like you, the man you see on the stage is the same guy you see every day, day in and day out. I mean, there's no difference between the Scott Cannell in the office and the Scott Cannell on the platform. They're the same person, you know. It's the same guy. He's very authentic in how he treats everyone. I will say this about Scott. You know, and maybe I hope I'm not wrong in saying this, and maybe Scott's even mentioned this in a message he's preached that I haven't been able to hear because I've been across the street with the kids. But I think this is true when I say this. So Scott's in his early 50s, and he's done a lot of things in his ministry. He's been a lot of places, been in a lot of different jobs. But I want to say that this is the first chance that he's actually done what he's been trained to do full time. So he's been a pastor, and I don't mean a worship pastor. He was a pastor, a lead pastor for over a decade.
Yeah.
He was a professor at Boyce College for years and years. I don't know how many years he was doing that. But he was trained to be a worship pastor. And I want to say that this may be the first time that he's actually been in a position where he's doing what he was trained to do. Huh. And I got to say that's not a bad thing. If you ask me what all those other positions did for him, how God trained him through the pastorate, through his teaching young people at Boyce to become worship pastors, all those experiences, we're getting the benefit of all that. When he stands in front of us, he's got all those years being a pastor, leading a church, teaching young kids, you know, how to lead worship and what all that means. And I just think it's made him a very unique person that I think it's very hard to find these days.
Oh, listen.
And so we're blessed.
Yeah, I've told the story many times that when we went looking for who was going to be our new person when Steve left, I had a very specific picture. I wanted somebody who was a pastor, not just somebody who was a musician who would allow us to call him a pastor, but somebody who was really a pastor, but somebody who was highly musically skilled, somebody who knew how to run a large program with budget and staff, somebody who was biblical in terms of their musical choices. And we had a list. This was, it actually hasn't been all that long ago. What's it been, 7 years? 7 years, I think? And we could only find a handful of people in the country who met the criterion, and Scott was my favorite candidate the whole time because I'd known him. We weren't best friends or anything at Southern, but I knew who he was. I saw him run that program. I saw how the folks loved him, and he just was a pastor's heart and a very skilled musician. Yes,
I'll say, from the first day that he came on staff, and we had our first meeting with the music staff, he made it very clear what his philosophy was, and it was all about the gospel. And he made that very clear that what we're doing is we're promoting the gospel. And that's always been, everything we sing is biblical, everything, it's all prayed over and thought about, and every song we are going to know that it's biblical and it's truth. Because that's what Scott brings.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, so listen, one of the things that you've both been here for so long. Now, you've been here since Lindsay Sr., but you've actually only been on staff since Lindsay Jr., because that's the 80s. So, every pastor before I got here was a big deal. You have stories about these guys who were big deals, so you got to tell us a story. Tell us a story about Dr. Lindsay Jr.
Can I start with, go backwards to him, make him the last one?
Say it again.
I have a special story about him. Can we start backwards?
Let's
go backwards.
All right, well, so let's go in reverse order then. Tell us a story about Dr. Brunson.
Okay, yeah, that's going to help me.
Okay.
Dr. Brunson, very, very kind to me, very sweet to our family. He loved the instrumental ministry, he loved the orchestra. He would come to me occasionally or call me and say, "Hey, have you heard this? Have you heard the music of this television show?" Because it'd be some magnificent theme music. Is there some way we can use that in the program or in some song? And I don't know, Pastor, we could try.
It wasn't the Andy Griffith Show, was it?
No. But real quick story. So when in the early days, when I first got here, one of the first things that camp told me when I came on staff was, you can't go to movies anymore.
You can't
You
what?
can't go to movies anymore.
Oh, okay.
Because we all had to sign a commitment form, and one of the things we could not do is go into a movie theater. And yeah, it's okay, it's all right, just save me some money. So we didn't go to movies for like 20 years. But when Dr. Brunson came, we were at a staff retreat in Orlando. It was one of the very first things we did with Dr. Brunson, and we had our first meeting, and we got the hint that maybe that moratorium was loosening up a little bit. And so I remember me and Rodney and Lang Patrick, our youth choir director at the time, were in a car going to lunch, and we pull up right beside Dr. Brunson's car, and Lang jumps out of the car, knocks on Dr. Brunson's window, and he rolls his window down and goes, "Does this mean we can go to movies now?" And Dr. Brunson goes, "Yep." And he came back, "We can go to movies now."
What's the first movie you went to?
I can't remember.
You can't remember? Okay. So it wasn't that big of a deal.
It wasn't that big a deal.
Okay. All right, what about a story about Dr. Vines?
Dr. Vines. My Grow group recently gave me a King Jared version of the Bible. Okay. Yes, I've got a Dr. Vines Bible, and
the expository
really,
study Bible.
I have a study Bible. Yes, so Dr. Vines, he wrote a nice dedication to me in the
Oh, that's
thing. Very sweet. Dr. Vines, I have a couple of things I can say about that. He was very particular about monitors, about stage monitors.
Okay.
So I don't know that we even had stage monitors before Dr. Vines came, but he liked hearing that voice of his coming back. It helps you to hear that.
Oh, he liked when he was preaching?
When he was preaching. We had none of that before he came. He brought that with him. That was his thing. And he'd spend hours with the media guys trying to get that just right.
Really?
All the time. But Travis McClay can tell you, we spent a lot of time getting that right. I remember, and another thing that Dr. Vines was a stickler about is no dead time. No dead time in the service. He hated it when there were seconds flew by and there was nothing happening. We were live on TV at the time. So we had to just go bang, 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 everything very quick. And so if Rodney was directing a song and I was the next guy up to direct something the orchestra was doing, I had to almost be standing behind him, ready to just kick him out of the way and start the next song. And I remember one time that Rodney was directing probably a choir song, and I had stood up to start the next song, and he got out of the way real fast, and I got up to the podium, and I looked over at the piano. And at the time, we had two pianists. We had Denise, and we had Marty Hamby.
Oh, yeah.
You've met Marty. Met Marty. Mm-hmm. And they were in the midst of transitioning. So Denise was getting off the piano, and Marty was coming onto the piano. And I'm sitting there going, okay, Dr. Vines ain't going to like this. And I'm waiting, and they make the transition, and we start the song. Probably 5 seconds had gone by. Well, Dr. Vines got me. So he said, Edson, he said, you waited too long to start that song. And I said, Pastor, I'm sorry. I said, but we were changing pianist. And he said, you should have started. And I said, but Pastor, the song started with the piano. And he said, you should have started. Yes, sir. I'll do better next time.
That's right. Won't happen again. All right, well, so now, the drum roll, Dr. Lindsay.
Dr. Lindsay, yes. Well, set this up. When I came on staff, when I came full time, and I was beginning to go to and I was going to the meetings. We met every Monday with all of the pastors, all the pastoral staff met on every Monday, and every year or two he would just tell all of the staff because we may have had some new faces in the room. And he would say, he said, look, he said, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to always be patting you on the back. He said, if you don't hear from me, you're doing a good job. That's what he said. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to always be telling you, great job, great job, great. He said, if you don't hear from me, just know you're doing a great job. Okay, that's fine. So fast forward to 1999, December. Now, Dr. Lindsay's only got, we didn't know it at the time, but he's only got about 4 months. But at the end of 1999, we were doing an orchestra program, probably the second or third week of December, and we had a male quintet that was singing with us. It's called Glad. It was a cappella.
Oh, yeah.
I brought them in to do the orchestra program with us, and they were a pretty big deal back in those days.
Big deal.
And so they were there. They were doing their sound check. And like every Sunday morning happens, we're doing the sound check, and Dr. Lindsay walks through the building. He walks through, and sometimes he'd stop and he'd listen. Sometimes he'd just keep on walking to his office, which was back behind the stage. And I'm there, and he stops, and he's talking to me, and he goes, yeah, they're pretty good. I said, thank you, Pastor. I think it's going to be good. And he said, why don't you come with me for a minute? I said, okay, sure. And so I followed him back to his office and sat down. It was just a small office, just a desk and his chair behind the desk and a couple of chairs out front, and I sat down. And he said, I'm going to announce my retirement today.
Oh.
And I said, oh my. And I didn't know what to say. I mean, I was totally dumbstruck. I didn't know what to say. And I said, oh my.
You didn't say anything about the interim position?
I didn't. I thought about it for a split second. And now we knew that Dr. Lindsay had had some cancer issues because he had had it removed from his face. It was in his face. But Dr. Lindsay, after he told me this, he said, I've got this pain. And he pointed to his chest, and like it was all over his chest. And he said, and so I said, well, Pastor, I'm praying for you. I didn't know what else to say to him. And so I left, and I'm sitting there, me and Rodney sitting on the stage in front of everybody. And as far as I know, me and his family were the only people that knew he was about to retire.
Oh, wow.
And I said to Rodney, I said, you won't believe what he's about to say. Oh, no. And Rodney goes, is he going to retire? Said, yeah. And so he did. And it wasn't long after that, I think March of, I forgot to say the most important thing. To me, anyway. In the meeting, before I left, he said, Edson, I want you to know you're doing a great job.
Oh, look at that. And maybe one day you'll be the permanent guy. That's great. Well, listen, I want to say to you both in front of everybody. First of all, what you said about Scott being the real deal, one of the things I love about you guys are the real deal. You need to know that the Dickinsons are who they appear to be. They love the Lord and love this church. And very, very thankful for you. And so many times in my life, it happened this morning. I'm standing here and I can't believe how wonderful it all is and how wonderful. I can't even believe I get to stand here, much less I get to serve and preach and do everything I get to do. And I'm like, it'll be Christmas time or it'll be Easter. And I'm going, I think there might be 3 places in the world where it could sound this good in a church. And I want to say to you in front of everybody that when I'm feeling that way and having that experience, I know it's because of you and your family's investment in our church. And I want you to know how much we appreciate and love you for all that you do to serve and advance the gospel here at First Baptist. I also would want to say to you that even though we're having a conversation, we don't ever want to get together without giving our folks an opportunity to hear about Jesus and respond to Jesus. You heard about how the Dickinsons came to know Jesus Christ. I hope you're feeling encouraged in Jesus tonight. If you don't know Jesus, I hope you'll turn from your sin and trust in him. I'm going to pray for you that'll happen. I'm going to pray and thank the Lord for y'all. Father, we thank you for the Dickinson family, for their life, for their marriage, for their family, and for their ministry. We thank you for the countless investments they have made in the kingdom here at First Baptist. We thank you for the way that they serve us so faithfully, so graciously, so with such hard work and diligence. We thank you for them. Father, I pray that their testimony would encourage people to trust in Jesus, to invest in your kingdom the way they have. And Father, we pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.